I see a syringe on the floor back there. There's something lying on the floor.
Every war has its casualties.
What's that you got there?
That's £15 worth of heroin.
This is what happens if you inject straight into an artery. Usually it will happen within minutes or hours of doing the injection.
They took all the pus from there and plus 4 inches inside. This was abscess caused by bad gear.
The images of those who've suffered in the war against drugs have become as familiar as old pictures from the trenches of the First World War. Of course, it's often been said that the first casualty of war is the truth. And in the war against drugs, we lost touch with the truth a long time ago.
Surrender to the drugs menace. We couldn't do that, we shouldn't do that, and we won't do that.
For years, British politicians have been courting the law and order vote by promising to get rid of the drugs problem.
The idea we are now considering is to create a register of hard drug dealers. The police must be informed of all changes of address. It is a new weapon in the battle against the dealer.
Last year, Britain spent £1.7 billion on the prohibition of drugs. It's become a world war. Every developed country has been dragged into it. There's no sign of any of them winning, but the hidden truth is even worse than that.
I want Britain to be the hardest place on earth to deal in hard drugs.
Politicians who have supported this war have created the very problems which they claimed to be solving.
And we can either choose to surrender to that, or we can choose to fight it harder.
I've spent the last 20 years reporting on crime and drugs and poverty, and I have no doubt that this global campaign of prohibition is the most dishonest and most destructive social policy of our time.
I don't think it's had any side effects that have been disadvantageous to me anyway.
The first thing you need to know about the war against drugs is that beneath the military rhetoric and the deaths and the massive expense, there's one great big lie. You can talk to just about anybody you like, politician or ordinary member of the public, and they'll tell you that we have to ban some drugs for the very good reason that they're poisonous. They ruin the minds and bodies of their users, kill them often. The truth is a lot more interesting. Take opiates, for example, like heroin and morphine, which are different versions of the same drug. Think of all those official anti-heroin messages and meet 71-year-old Bernard Varley.
I still read, I write, I drive. I'm very active when I can get away on holiday. My interest is archaeology, so I read up about it and I spend hours on a site. So my mental capacity, as far as I'm aware, is not affected in any way.
Through the Marie Curie Hospice in North London, Bernard Varley started taking morphine 5 years ago to control the pain of his bone cancer. Morphine is an opiate, exactly the same in its effects as heroin, which doctors refer to as diamorphine. Bernard takes up to 400 milligrams of morphine a day, a considerable quantity for any drug user. Yet if you believe what the politicians tell us, Bernard Varley should be a wreck, some kind of walking zombie. The difference between Bernard Varley's experience and the familiar image of the heroin-crazed junkie lies right at the heart of the big lie. Heroin has a big drawback. It can be highly addictive, and it's a very bad idea to start using it. But the truth is that pure opiates, properly prescribed and monitored, do not damage the minds or bodies of their users.
But all these different opiates, morphine, diamorphine, and the various little subgroups, they're essentially the same, are they, in terms of their effect?
Well, morphine and diamorphine are very similar, yes. Diamorphine gets metabolized in the body very quickly to morphine and then works in exactly the same way. I think people who are used to it now feel that morphine is a very flexible, easy drug to use, which is, provided one uses it appropriately, a very safe drug to use.
Not unusually dangerous.
Not unusually dangerous, no.
In a 25-year career as a cancer doctor, Teresa Tate has prescribed morphine and heroin for hundreds of patients.
The most common side effect, which happens in almost everybody, is constipation. Almost everybody gets constipated with morphine, but with all other strong painkillers as well. And probably about 1/2 of people may feel sick or actually be sick when they start taking morphine, and one can manage that. That side effect will only last for a few days usually, and patients will feel fine again afterwards. And those are really the two most common side effects.
Constipation and a few days nausea. It might make you drowsy too, but it's a long way from heroin screws you up. But then, of course, there's the question of overdose. Politicians are always telling us how deadly heroin is. How does that strike a specialist doctor with 25 years' experience?
Supposing we take two drugs that patients use, heroin and paracetamol. Are we able in any sensible way to say which of those might be more likely, A, to damage your body, and B, to kill you?
Well, I think that most doctors would tell you that paracetamol is actually quite a dangerous drug when used in overdose. It has a fixed upper limit for its total dose in 24 hours, and if you exceed that, perhaps doubling it, you can certainly put yourself at great risk of liver failure and of death. Whereas with diamorphine, should you double the dose that you normally were taking, I think the consequence would be to be sleepy for a while, and quite possibly not much more than that, and certainly no permanent damage as a result.
This sounds unbelievable, that you can take pure heroin without being damaged, that it's less likely to kill you than a drug we sell over the counter without a prescription, and yet scientific opinion is unanimous.
The available evidence indicates that heroin, when provided in pure form, is a relatively safe drug. When heroin-dependent persons have been provided with daily maintenance doses under medical supervision, marked physiological deterioration or significant psychological impairment has not been observed. Heroin is very addictive, but does not in itself cause any serious illnesses, nor does it harm any organs or tissues.
And the more you look, the more bizarre the truth becomes. Compare pure heroin to sugar, for example. Dr. Russell Newcombe lectures on drug addiction studies at John Moores University in Liverpool.
Pharmaceutical heroin compared to clean, pure sugar is less harmful. It won't rot your teeth, it doesn't cause breathing problems, it doesn't make you obese, and doesn't cause any of the other health problems that sugar can be associated with.
The strange and generally untold truth is that, properly prescribed, opiates like heroin are very safe drugs. The politicians have got it wrong. For years in this country, the prime users of opiates were people who had become addicted after operations.